County, Sweden, Toronto, Canada, Michigan, North Carolina, Texas.
We're on.
Yeah.
We're on.
1, 2, 3.
We're going to give it a little bit of time just to give some people time to get on. So while we do that, I think, I don't know, someone should do something like Justin.
Let's rap or something.
Maybe. I don't know.
We look like
we're all
wearing, yeah, we're like a
No, I love it. Everyone's giving a shout out right now where they're watching in live. So,
dude, this is happening.
Is sound coming through there, Jordy? We got sound coming through? 1 second. 1 second.
Maybe we should play the cup game or something.
Cup game? How do you play that?
I don't know.
Is that where you? Is that cup check?
Yeah, it's one of
We're
those.
good.
yep.
What do you guys think? Should we wait a little longer? Should
No,
we
no, let's go.
Let's get going.
Yep.
All right.
People are ready.
Thank you everybody for coming to this event. I feel like a pastor. Thank you for coming. We are obviously going to be going through and talking about our newest program, which is MAPS Prime Pro. Probably the most exciting program that we've done to date. We've recruited Dr. Brink and his expertise because we really wanted to come out with something that was correctional in nature. Now, the MAPS Prime program, the original program, is a program that's got some correctional elements to it, and it was designed to help you prime your workouts. Well, Prime Pro is totally correctional, so it's going to benefit everybody from people with aches and pains to athletes to improve their performance. Athletes, there's a lot of weak links with athletes. It's interesting when you work with people who compete for a living or even people who do it for fun. Many times they have an imbalance that they're unaware of. As Dr. Brink likes to say, athletes are some of the best compensators in the world, where they'll compensate or overcompensate for an imbalance. Well, this type of a program is going to address a lot of that stuff. It's great for establishing good recruitment patterns within the body. If you're a professional in the fitness industry, one of the reasons why we said pro at the end of this is because for trainers, for massage therapists, for physical therapists, doctors, chiropractors, this program is invaluable. You'll be able to take your clients through our compass on this, which is our assessment process, and you'll be able to identify areas of concern. And within this product or program, you'll have the answer, how to correct those problems. So we did something where we took a very complex problem and put it together into something that we could deliver to the average person to where they could follow along and, and figure those things out.
Well, and the idea of today's webinar too is there's no way that we could possibly cover this entire program. So there's well over 6 hours of content and demos. That's 8 if you include the 2 for the shoulder that are on this, with multiple movements and exercises that go with it. So in each exercise demo is a good 5 minutes plus. So what we wanted to do is we're going to take one test, one area we're going to focus on. We're going to take you guys all the way through that process so you can see what it looks like. And then we'll open the floor up for Q&A and we can discuss that video, and then we'll move on to the next. And then at the very end of this video, we'll go through some Q&A and have some dialogue with everybody on here.
So here's what you're going to expect from the webinar. First off, if you're watching at home and you have some space around you, that's excellent, because you can do these along with us. We're actually going to show you some of the videos that are in this program, and so you can test yourself out while you're watching. While we're playing the videos, ask questions. So if you're watching on YouTube, there's a spot where you can ask questions. Type them in there while you're watching the video. We'll be watching, and then at the end of those videos, we'll answer some of those questions for you. We're going to go through, so we did a poll, and we asked a lot of our forum members what areas they'd like to cover. There are 7 tests that are in this particular program. It starts with the neck, it goes into the shoulder, there's actually a scapula test also, the wrist, the lumbar spine, the hips, the ankles, and the toes. Most people were interested in seeing the hips, so we picked that one for today. So we're going to go through and show you the test for the hips, and we're going to show you the repatterning movements that you start with. We're going to show you the tension control movements and the active control movements. So in typical MAPS fashion, we've programmed it out in order so you can see exactly what you want to do. We're also going to take you through and show you all of the blueprints. So Doug's going to switch screens here in just a second, and we're going to go through the blueprints so you can kind of see what the program has. Again, don't forget, ask the questions while the video is playing, type them in. we'll be watching here, and then we'll answer the questions after every single video. So I don't know if there's anything else we want to say before
No, just have Doug go ahead and put the prime compass up there so people can see what the compass looks like.
You're going to pull up the blueprints there? All right, Doug, and then I don't know if you, can you show me the screen there?
Yeah, blueprints are up. So
Excellent. So the first page you're seeing is the Prime Pro compass. I actually posted this on my Instagram page, so it's up there as well. And you can see all the areas that are being targeted with this compass. We chose areas that...
Explain that, why these areas are important, because what we deal with and what many clients deal with is aches and pains, and they a lot of times don't understand where the root cause is, and that's what we're trying to get to at the bottom of this whole program, is to help people find these issues that they're having in their body through these tests all over all these major joints.
Right, so as trainers, we're taught to assess things like squat, overhead press, and posture, but we don't learn anything when it comes to the neck. We don't know how to assess even the shoulders on a deep level, and then forget about things like the wrists or the ankles or the toes. So you can see here, these are the most important areas that we picked to do this, in terms of this compass test. Yeah. Now on the next page, Doug, if you could scroll down. Let's see here. So here, it's going to tell you how to self-score your tests. There's key points for each of the tests. You can go ahead and keep scrolling there, Doug. You've got key points to all the tests. It's very, very detailed. Then we talk about the repatterning movements. Now, repatterning movements really are designed to connect you to some of these tests. And what I mean by that is you're going to get into these tests in the repatterning movement, and we're going to show you how to activate muscles within these tests so that you can connect to some of these positions. This was a lot of Dr. Brink's influence in these tests, and they're brilliant. I mean, I want to say this and be very clear. Many, many, many of the movements, if not all of the movements, are going to be new to all of you, even if you're personal trainers. Me, Adam, and Justin were blown away by how many of these we were unfamiliar with.
And
yeah, that's why the videos are so long and descriptive, is because there's so many intricate cues to pay attention to. So as we kind of show you, you're going to get a little bit of an idea as we go through the hips in those videos to kind of see how Dr. Brink breaks it down, but really pay attention to those little nuanced cues, because it makes a massive difference.
If you have the ability to get down on the ground and actually perform the movements as we go through it, it will help, because it's going to be different for everybody. And you'll see in the videos, Dr. Brink is taking Justin and I through the different movements. And you can tell just the difference between Justin and I. Each of us have different imbalances, and the intention of these movements are so important. It's not simply just getting into the 90-90, which is one of the moves you guys will see first, and then just performing the movement. It's what you're trying to focus on while you're in that position. So pay close attention to that when we go over those details.
And then go ahead.
So if I add something here, what we want people to understand is this is a baseline, right? These tests are a baseline. So I think when we look at exercise, we like to baseline a squat. Well, if you can't squat, there's a movement prerequisite in order to get into that squat. Mm-hmm. So what this does is this takes every single joint in the body, and we make sure that you can give yourself a baseline through your neck, through your shoulder, and if you can't do it, there's got to be a question as to why. Why can't you do it? And then now going back into this repatterning, this is changing the brain's awareness, right? So if you can create an awareness as to what you're doing wrong, then we know what we can now start to change. So it starts with, like Adam said, is the intent. What is your intent as you go through this movement? If you can't do it, we got to figure out what that is. So it's slow, it's methodical. There's nothing fast about any of these exercises that we do.
Definitely. Doug, if you could scroll down a little more into the next page, I think is the control movement. So control movements are closer to exercises than the repatterning movements. And we broke down control movements into two categories. We have the tension control movements, which are performed with more intrinsic tension, and the active control movements, which look a little bit more like exercises, where you're moving actively within the exercise. We put them in a particular order because it's progressing your body through first connecting, then connecting harder, and then moving with that new connection to correct some of those imbalances that you may find when you fail some of these tests. Doug, if you can keep scrolling down.
An analogy that I give clients when they're doing movements like this, think of it like a golfer trying to hit a golf ball, or a baseball player trying to hit a baseball, and you swing and you miss the ball. the harder you try to swing the club or swing the bat is not going to make the movement better or get better at hitting the ball. It's breaking down your swing where that's breaking down and then focusing on all those little intricate parts. That's like what these movements are. So when you look at the 90-90, which we'll get into in a minute, don't look at it like, oh, I can or can't do this, and then try harder to do the movement, but yet pay attention to all the little details. Is your knee coming up? Is your hips? Are you falling to the side? All these little things, and that's where you're focusing on those little tiny movements.
So like you're just saying on this is we get into these controlled movements, it's all about tension, right? And it's not about like an all or none. It's not zero tension to 100%, but it's a gradual scale. So as we start to scale up, what you're doing is you are actually controlling that muscle activation. If you can control that muscle activation, the body will allow you to generate more range of motion through that controlled range of motion.
Excellent.
Thus, your baseline will change.
Excellent. Doug, if you can go ahead and scroll down to the bottom, just nice and slow, so people can kind of see the amount of detail that's in this program. So the video, typical, now most of our MAPS programs, the videos are about a minute long, where we show you how to do an exercise. These videos are about 5 minutes long each. They're taught by Dr. Brink. The subjects, and most of them are Adam and Justin, and I'm in a few of them myself. And the coaching on this is just, it's on another level in terms of the detail. Again, it's a correctional-based program, so that's the most important part of it. So you guys kind of get the gist now with the blueprints.
And this is like Prime. This is something that's supposed to complement a program. So it doesn't matter if you're a CrossFit person, if you're a runner, any sort of an athlete, if you have another program that you're following. This is literally for everybody. Everybody, whether, and if you're somebody who can't even get to the gym and work out, this is actually where we take a lot of our clients. We start them through MAPS Prime Pro and Prime before we progress them into the gym. You can do this several times a day.
So I think that Dr. Brink kind of nailed, part of that as being, it's like the prerequisite and really check to see if your joint functions the way it really should. And this is one way that you can screen that process, and also you can even improve, even though you're at a high level and you're a performance athlete. There's always things that we tend to compensate towards. So this is something that we can reassess and see how well we actually do.
I would have loved this as a personal trainer. That's for sure.
Well, one of the questions, so I know we're going to get this question, so I want to address it early, because what's unique about this program, you won't see a prescription for time or repetitions or how often. So I know that people are going to be like, well, then how much do I do with this? And if you think that this is a neurological disconnect or something that patterning that we're trying to work on, frequency is king. It's not about how intense you do these movements, but how often and how frequent you do it.
And how perfect you do them.
Yeah, exactly. So you're trying to perfect the form. You're trying to do it as much as possible. So, you want to start off with at least, once a day adding this in, or before your workouts, and then progressively get more and more and more and more. This is not something that you can't do really too much of.
No.
Yeah.
No.
I think Brink gave a great example of how he tells a lot of his clients. He'll tell them between commercial breaks, like your average commercial break is 4 minutes long. You take one of these movements. You do one commercial break, you focus on one side. The next commercial break, you do the other side, and you're doing that the entire time. You're sitting down watching TV.
Except nobody watches commercials anymore. That's what I think. Doug, are we? What's on the screen now? Is it just us now? Are they? You can turn that off. Go and put it back on us, because I want to talk about the 90-90 hip test before we show the video. So
they're seeing this.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So
they're not seeing that.
Oh, sorry. Okay. So before we get into the first video, we're going to show you the 90-90 hip test. Now, Dr. Brink, why did we choose the 90-90 as the test for the hips?
90-90 is a huge one because most people sit on their butt all day long. So when we get them into a position, what I like about it is it puts people into internal and external range of motion through their joints, through the hip joint specifically. What I like about it as well, as a chiropractor, a lot of people come with low back issues. When we put them into this 90-90 position, if they can't sit in an upright position, that already tells me where they're going to put a lot of their stress. So they're adding stress to their lumbar spine, where their hips are actually the biggest problem. It's not the low back.
Got it. So internal, external rotation.
Correct.
You have to sit up with good posture.
So today we're
Doug-
going
Doug
through
is
this
going to
90-90
restart
drill.
that video,
90-90
sorry.
is huge when it comes to just hip movement. So what we've got these guys in right now is left leg is in 90-degree angle, and this is external range of motion. Right knee is in internal range of motion, again at 90-90 as well. So just a simple little test that I'll take these guys through is, especially on that back leg, is if they stick their right arm out, straight out from their side as their chest is square to the front leg, they can sit there and monitor and say, okay, is my knee in line with my elbow and my wrist? If it is, then you know you're in a good position. If the knee is too far forward, slide it back a bit. If it's too far back, slide it forward a bit. We want to make sure that everything is always in a good position. And then they can let the arm relax. The next phase that we're looking for is this lead leg, is can it sit flush to the ground? If it can't sit flush to the ground, right, then we want to prop something up underneath it just to give them a little feedback.
Yeah, a lot of people will be like this right away.
Yeah, so Adam's got a good job
Definitely
here.
have to force it down.
Yeah, and so this is where you want to add something underneath the knee so you're not forcing, but you're getting the feedback as, okay, this is sort of what normal is for me right now, because that is going to change, right? So now the next thing is if they have to keep their arm out to their side, like the left arm right now, they want to try and post up next to the hip. The goal here is to be able to take the hand away without any compensation through the lumbar or thoracic spine.
So explaining that in detail, what he means by that is I can't hold myself up completely square. You'll see I'm cheating through my obliques right here. So try and hold myself up.
And I'm even worse than you, so this is going to be challenging.
Yep. So the goal here, again, is to be as upright as you can. Remember, center of the chest, we want to be coming straight out that femur. Make sure everything is nice and centered. You may cramp as you're just in this position.
Yeah, you'll feel that obliques, really.
Yeah, you're going to feel your right side. You'll feel your glutes, you'll feel the capsules, you're going to feel everything starting to open. Goal here is to sit as upright as you can and just be able to control that position.
And like the last test that you took us through, this in itself becomes an exercise.
This in itself, yes, huge.
I mean, most people are not going, most of your clients, unless they have a yoga, gymnastic type of background, are going to struggle to get into this position. So I find myself just spending time teaching them how to get in this position and focusing on those little details of getting your knee to force down. Like that in itself is like an exercise of just sitting upright, good posture, squared up like you said, and then driving the knee into the ground.
You said sitting upright, which, you know, let's explain that as far as being shoulders retracted, depressed, and then driving your chest up.
Well, sitting upright, there's two cues that I'll give them. Imagine you're trying to float the belly button out over your knee and you're trying to lift your tailbone up to the ceiling.
Okay.
Right? Because once you do that, you don't want to lean back either, right? So you're going to have to lean a bit forward on this, especially, you know, once you get that control. And remember, we're going to do this on both sides. This is a good test on both sides, holding for, you know, a 5 or 10 second count just to see, can you do this?
Now I noticed too, with some clients that I train with this, their feet, they want to point their toes out and
right now just keep it at 90 degrees.
Okay, so just everything's trying to stay in 90.
And then go ahead and switch sides there. Same thing, left arm out to the side, just check yourself, right? So as you're checking where your body should be at, right? Chest is square to the front leg, you're at a good 90-degree angle, back leg's at 90 degrees, leg isn't too far forward or too far back. And then, again, do you have to post yourself up by keeping your arm down?
Yeah.
Good. So again, this becomes an issue in the hip. So we want to make sure that we address, is your left side tighter, is your right side tighter?
Yep. And definitely for me, I already feel this right leg my knee wants to pop up, where I have a much easier time with my left knee staying down.
And then both of you guys just try and take your hands off. And then you'll see how that compensation really occurs.
On this. Well,
So what we're looking for when we're doing this, if I'm doing this with you guys, is if I pop myself down, I can go into this 90-degree angle, and we can take hands off the ground here, and we can sit as upright as we can.
Show off.
yeah. It's not happening.
This is gold. Goals. Hashtag goals, right? Like the kids say, hashtag goals.
That's it.
Good.
Is that 3, 2, 1?
We're on? All right. So you just watched the 90-90 hip test, and we have some questions, right?
Yeah, the first question, this section is killer right now. When I get into this position, I have tightness in my left glute. Is this me overcompensating to stabilize, or is this to be expected?
That's a great question. Dr. Brink, what should a pass feel like? Like if I get a 90-90 and I'm doing this, should I feel tension in my glutes? Should I feel like I'm having to support myself, or what should it feel like?
Should feel natural, should feel easy to get into it. Yeah. So you should be able to sit with an upright spine. The left hip, if the left leg was forward, you're going to feel a little stretch into the hip capsule on the left-hand side. You also may feel your right glute starting to kick in because that's that back leg. So the glute's really trying to stabilize you in that upright posture. You feeling that muscle work, I'm okay with that. Now you may also notice that it starts to cramp and spasm. You may feel it sort of travel up the side of your back. Now you know, okay, there's something probably going wrong here, or either that or you just haven't been in that position for a long time, and now those muscles are trying to react to the position you just put yourself in.
And like the video says, I should be nice and upright, because when I get into this position, I'm doing the sideways twist kind of thing. That's a fail.
That's a fail.
That's a fail.
Yep.
Any other questions there?
And then, what does the 90-90 address? Is it anterior pelvic tilt? What are we addressing with that?
Not worrying about an anterior or posterior pelvic tilt. What we're addressing is, does your hip have the capacity to actually rotate in the capsule? Yes. So if you create external rotation with the lead leg and you're creating internal rotation on the back leg, does your hips actually have the ability to articulate in the joint how you're supposed to? The anterior and posterior pelvic tilt is going to be completely independent as to what your hips are actually doing.
You can, like what T is explaining, what Brink's explaining right now too, when you get really good at this, you'll be able to progress to where you can, without any hands, transition from one side to the other side. So if you know already, if you're having a hard time, just like I can't keep myself upright without bracing the opposite hand. We want to get to a place where we can actually posture up without holding or bracing our hands, our knee is flat on the ground, sit upright, totally balanced, and then we know we're doing really well is if we can transition to the other 90-90 side without even having to use your hands.
One thing I noticed with this, because it addresses internal, external rotation of the hips, is for me, external rotation is no problem. I had no idea that I had such bad internal rotation and such bad connection to it. In fact, in some of the upcoming videos you'll see, you try to connect to that. I remember getting into 90-90, Dr. Brink told me to lift my back foot while keeping my knee on the floor, and I couldn't do it. And I said to him, I don't have that range of motion. And he said, no, you're wrong. And he takes my foot, and no joke, lifts it up. It's like next to my head. And I'm looking at it, and it doesn't hurt. And he says, that's your range of motion. The problem is, you can't connect to that range of motion, which was mind-blowing.
You see that in the next video. Somebody else mentions, I feel in the opposite oblique, it feels tight. And that's the inability for that internal rotation on the opposite right, Brink? They can't, and you're having a hard time internally rotating the hip on the other side, so your obliques on the opposite side are struggling to hold you up. So that's your internal rotation that you need to focus on.
You're compensating.
Well, yeah, and what you're going to see is your body may start to cramp in other areas that you're not even focused on. Again, what's your brain trying to do at that moment? It's trying to recruit muscles from who knows where in your body to try and get that job done.
And this is also why we start here before we get into the patterning and the other movements, is the test in itself is already an exercise. Yeah. So a lot of times, I just try to get in the habit of getting down into this position and driving the knee and the ankle into the ground, posturing up, holding that with good posture. That in itself can be a great exercise that you can do before we even progress to the other movements.
Excellent. Any other questions here?
One person asked, will this help with snapping hip syndrome? I guess
it can. Snapping hip syndrome is something that's probably been there for quite some time. It's that eccentric load of the hip, lowering the leg to get that little snap across, whether it's the femur. It can definitely help. The biggest thing that I tell people when they do have snapping hip is if they get their hips to start to move how they're supposed to, they're not going to generate that force on that tissue to create like a hypertrophy of that tissue.
Excellent.
Somebody else is asking, when should I perform the 90-90, before or after a gym session?
All day long.
So the original MAPS Prime teaches you how to prime your workouts. This is correctional in the sense that you can do this before your workouts too. But really, the best way to use some of the movements we're going to show you is to do them throughout the day. Like if you're working or whatever, sit in these positions, do the repatterning movement, do the tension control movement, do the active control movement. Frequency is king when it comes to changing recruitment patterns. Intensity is not king with this. It's about doing it frequently. Think about how often you sit, how often you walk, how often you do movements that establish and cement these bad patterns. The only way to reverse them is to combat them with more frequency.
But to answer that question as well, yes, it will aid in your workout. So if you're doing a deadlift session, a squat session, something, lunging, you want your hips to definitely work. So if you're going to get your work, yeah, definitely do that 90-90 before, create that tension, create that awareness from that brain, get the good intent going, and then go ahead and go lift.
Okay, I see a pattern happening here. There's a lot of syndromes and conditions people are kind of coming up with here. So here's the next one. So will this help with the piriformis syndrome?
It definitely can. So anything that's related to the hip, it can definitely help with. You got to remember is, what is the root cause here? So we have a lot of symptoms. We've got piriformis, we've got psoas tendinosis, we can have, iliacus. There's a lot of different things that we can have that can create a problem, but where's the problem coming from? So this is why I like the assessment, the baseline. If the hip joint itself doesn't move how it's supposed to, your body's going to compensate for that. The muscles are going to follow what the joint does. If you have amazing movement, okay, then maybe you have too much movement. Maybe you're way too hypermobile, so now the muscles are trying to hang on. So this is sort of what you have to ask yourself when you're going through these baseline tests.
The way I simplify this for clients, think of it like this, and we chose the hip because we knew this is one of the more complex areas, right? The hip and the shoulder, probably one of the most, if not the most complex area to explain all this in detail. Think of it like this. So the hip goes into the hip socket. You've got all these muscles around it that are responsible for it to be able to move freely. And what happens over time when we do these same movements, moving in the sagittal plane, sitting at our desks all day long, we lose this ability to connect and use all these other muscles that are responsible for good joint health. So what ends up happening, like Brink was saying, is they start to overcompensate. You get the rubbing of the joints, you get this arthritis, bursitis. These are all condition caused because all those supporting muscles aren't working properly to assist the movement of the joint. So what we're trying to do is to help you get reconnected to those muscles. Like Sal said earlier, Brink took Sal's leg, he moves it up, which you guys will see that video in a minute. So he's got the ability, the range of motion is there. He's just not using his muscles properly to get that ability. And when you start to do that, that's where we start to get these issues. Yeah. All these syndromes that you guys are all talking about, absolutely getting good, healthy hips is going to help all of that because it's all connected, it all works together.
Now, maybe we'll take like one or two more questions here, and then we're going to kind of move on.
Yeah, let's go.
I think with a lot of these conditions, the biggest answer that I'll give to people is it depends. Yeah. Right? It depends because everyone is an individual. I don't know if it's piriformis, is it tendinosis? I don't know what these issues are. So it depends. What is your daily routine? What's your habits? What are your likes, your dislikes? These are all things that can go into having these conditions.
Just keep in mind that pain can come from two places. It can be acute, where you hurt yourself, or most pain is chronic. And if your joints are moving the way they should, you're not going to have chronic pain. That's what you need to remember. So we do one more question.
Yeah, one more. So Sean asks, if you know you have shitty overall mobility, would you start with the BI joints, with the bi joints, hips, shoulders, assess what is worse? Start bottom up, ankles all the way up to wrists?
Are you fucking blind or what? I can see you look like an old man.
Dude, because I don't have my glasses. You guys know I have glasses.
Why don't I read them? I'm watching you read that. It's hurting me watching you read it, dude.
So to answer that question here, the three most simple areas that I would actually work on is first I'd look at your feet, I'd look at your hips, I'd look at your shoulders. So if you know that you're just an overall tight human, right, let's work on the most three common areas. You're on your feet all the time. You need your hips to sit and move. You need your shoulders to move as well. Those are the three most areas that I would want you to work on first, along with everything else.
Okay, so we're going to get into the next video here in a second. So imagine that you failed this hip test. It's going to direct you to do particular exercises and movements to get that joint to move or to get that area to move better. Now, all these tests come with several, repatterning movements or several tension control movements and active control movements. We're picking just one here for the sake of the webinar. For the hips in particular, there's two repatterning movements. The video we're going to show you is the one focusing on the back leg. So I think if Doug's ready, we can switch over to the video.
So here we go, the 90-90, man.
The double threat right here.
Too bad Sal's not here to be a triple threat.
Oh, yeah. I wish he was, yeah.
All right, so 90-90 here. We are going to get, again, first thing, 90 degrees on the front leg, 90 degrees on the back leg. All right, so from here, what we want to try and do is, the goal here is to try and take your downside or whichever, is the front leg, try and take that hand away from the ground. Yeah. But if you have to post up, again, you can put the hand out to post up.
Which I think is, I can't without cheating.
I can do it.
Right, if I do this 90-90, this is a lot of work just to hold me up, so I have to prop.
We have work to do there. Yeah.
Which is the regression. I think it's important that people see that, that a lot of people are gonna have a hard time. Most of my clients have a hard time just even getting in this. As soon as they get in this position, knee starts to come up, they can't hold their body weight up, so this will be challenging for a lot of people.
You'll feel cramps and all that stuff you gotta fight through, so.
So now we're in this position, we got the 90-90, we have to prop ourselves up, we wanna square.
Present our chest up.
Yep, square your chest to your front leg. Okay, just again, you're just trying to feel. Okay, what do you feel as you're sitting in this position? Make sure there's no pain anywhere. You may cramp. Cramping is completely fine as you're sitting here. Don't lean too far back, you know, over here. So you want to just be upright as much as you can. And what do you guys feel as you're here?
Well, I can feel my hip, my right hip.
Lots of tightness over here.
Yeah.
My right hip, I can feel there. I can feel my oblique even a little bit, trying to hold myself upright. And then I feel this knee wanting to come up.
Yeah, so goal here is to try and get that lead leg down to the ground. And by doing that too, we can also push through the front ankle. You're gonna feel that glute kick in a little bit more there.
So you feel actively engaged there.
Yeah.
Right away, just to get in that position, now I can feel that glute firing to press down, keep the tension on the floor.
Then from here, let's get the back leg to work. So the job here is, do you even have good internal rotation? So we want to try and lift that ankle as high as you can with nothing else moving. So we want to try and pull as much as we can.
Even lift
so
your back leg,
you will feel, again, hip working, glutes working, glute medius working. You're going to feel sort of that whole entire right or left hip, depending on whichever leg is back, really working hard. So, you know, for Adam here, as he's working, if I just wanted to, again, test his flexibility, go ahead and lift. So we know what his active control is. And again, a lot of this is coming from, you know, Andrea Ospina and his functional range conditioning stuff. So as I want to lift here, we can see how much more passive flexibility he's got, you know, through here. So if I let go, you can see where he's losing a lot of that motion. So we know the hip can actually get into a good position, but he just doesn't have the control necessary to lift it into that position. So now he's losing and he's lacking a lot of that control.
And you know, I can tell you right now that this was something that I've been working a lot on, and just this last week on vacation, I wasn't down doing my drills, and I can already feel the regression since I haven't been incorporating it again. I mean, it's just...
Well, it's an uphill battle to fight, right? If it's been established year after year after year of patterns that you're now just starting to kind of try and retrain, it's going to take a while. Right? I noticed the same thing. Like, I've got to a point where I felt good and I could stay upright pretty easily, whereas just lately all the patterns of sitting down and then driving and all that has really tightened up these hips.
And again, when your hips get tight, you're losing that mobility in the hips. Where's that pressure going to go to? Right in that lumbar spine.
Back.
So, you know, you can even see here as he's using this prop, he's still creating a lot of torque through this lumbar spine, where I would really want him to be a little bit more upright. So I could even place a block, you know, up underneath his hand here to really try and help him, you know, up into this straighter position to hold him here, so he's not putting that torsion into that lumbar spine. We want that hip to work even harder, which again is going to decrease the angle on that left-hand side. It's going to make his hip have to work even harder. And as I let go, he's going to start to tip over.
So the micro adjustments that you do with a client in this, because I feel like the 90-90, there's so many areas that people start to deviate when they're in that. You know, when I was teaching somebody, I would teach them just to first just try and get upright. Like that right there in itself is like work, and just practicing keeping your posture upright and being as straight as possible while just keeping the knee down and not wanting to flare up. And same thing with the back heel. Once I get that down, then I'm just trying to get them to barely articulate that back foot.
And sometimes just sitting in that position is enough.
Right.
That's all you got to do. That's work in itself.
And so when you're watching TV or you're just doing anything, like just get in this position will be really beneficial.
Commercials, right? Again, we want to stay in these positions for 2+ minutes, right? So commercials are usually about 4 minutes or so. Hey, you do your left side for 4 minutes. The next commercial set, you do your right side for 4 minutes, right? And you just keep patterning that.
So the regression is just getting upright. Once you get to that point where this starts to become more comfortable, then you can start challenging this back leg and getting it to top. Now, the intent too, again, like every other movement we've talked about in MAPS Prime Pro, is, you know, it isn't about just being able to lift it, because I can lift it, but right away my chest wants to lean forward. I want to cheat. I want to cheat through the obliques and everywhere else in my body. The idea is to find that good posture and then also be able to maintain that while you move the foot and control.
Can you control the joint? That's all we're looking for.
All right, so here's our first question. What do you guys, what do you do if the client doesn't have much passive flexibility?
So if they don't have good passive flexibility, you can regress this 90-90 into just a half 90, where you could put their front leg on a bench, you know, or up on a table, or, you know, kitchen table, or, you know, something that they can actually get to. They can lift their leg and they can try and sit in that position. And then what you want to do is just, again, slowly get their bodies to work, you know, down into that, whether it's internal or external range of motion.
How crazy was it when he lifted Adam's leg up?
Like so much range of motion there.
So
that's
it's like
available, right?
you're just totally not connected to it.
Well, I think that the first time that he ever did that with me, that's what really opened my eyes up. Like, I have the flexibility, right? I have the ability to get there. I just am not connected. That was huge for me. And to think that I couldn't even, I don't have the hip strength to internally or externally rotate my own leg.
But yet you're a big, strong guy, and you can go lift a heavy weight, and you can't lift your leg off the ground.
Right. Which explains a lot too. I'm somebody, you know, I was battling with bursitis in my hips, and this was a major indicator of why. When I saw this, like, God, no wonder I can deadlift 500 pounds, but I can't lift my leg, internally rotate it off the ground. I mean, that's huge.
All right. So next question.
Can you come out of the pose and go back into it after you release the cramp?
So yes, you can, but the goal is to stay in the cramp, right?
He told me that before, and I was like, no.
Sucks. Yeah.
When you stay in the cramp with that, that's just a neurological, you know, trigger telling you that, okay, you're working in an area that we haven't been in and we don't know how long, right? So you get that confusion in the muscle is going to cramp. If I tell people, hey, pull harder, pull harder, pull harder, what you'll start to teach yourself is that cramp will just fizzle away. And once it does start to go away, then all of a sudden you get in that position, and then you find your new range of motion. It may cramp a little bit more, right? As you, again, regain more range of motion, more control, that cramp just goes away.
Something you can do, somebody asked a question, I tried this in the gym, and since I can't do the lift on my own, would resisting it on the bar on a Smith machine help, or should I concentrate on trying to lift it? So something that I'll do in that 90-90 position is I'll reach back, I'll grab my own ankle, and I'll lift it up as far as I can, and then I try and hold it there, and I slowly release with my hand. So and you'll notice you'll get more range that way. So lifting it up yourself, and then trying to hold that position intrinsically for as long as you can, and you will feel it want to cramp up when you do this. But I would suggest you doing that with yourself than actually using something like a machine or another tool. Trying to do it intrinsically yourself would be ideal. At least that's what I think. Right?
Intrinsically is great, but if you want to give yourself another baseline, like in my office, I've got yoga blocks, and so I will put their leg up to the point to where they're at their maximum range of motion,
and then try and lift it
and then I'll say, I want you to lift off of that spot, because what we're doing is we're teaching the brain, here, we're at my maximal end range of motion right here. Let me turn these muscles on in that position versus lowering, and then we're always working on a less than optimal, you know, range of motion.
So in other words, you're saying, like, here's my back leg in the 90-90. You lift it up, you put it on one of those yoga blocks, and then you tell the client, now lift it off of that.
Right. And they're not going to move.
Yeah, you're not going to be able to get it off because you don't have that range.
You're just trying to get connected.
But you will feel yourself working to do that. So.
Yes. So remember, a lot of these tests here, you may not get any movement whatsoever, but it's the intent. I still want you working at 20, 40, 60, 80, 100% effort, even though there's nothing going on. You are still connecting to that tissue, even though we're objectively not moving anything.
So remember, with repatterning movements that you'll find in Prime Pro, the goal of the repatterning movement is to connect. That's it. So it's really just to connect to that area, be able to activate it. Once you've gotten good at activating it, then you move on to the next exercise, which will be a tension control movement.
Which I think, you know, this goes back into sort of what, you know, the Prime Pro and then Prime. You know, Prime, we have that compass test, we have the 3 zones. We are priming you for the workout. This is, I remember using the example, you know, on the forum of what we've got right here is Prime is sort of like the body of the Ferrari, right? This here is the engine to the Ferrari. Right, so in order to get the body and get everything to look perfect, we need the engine to work. If not, you just have a frame. That's all you've got.
It's just a lot deeper. It's a lot more detailed, a lot more correctional.
This one's been asked quite a bit, and they're actually just wanting to dive deeper into the benefits for improving mobility in that particular position. Like, can you go over like the benefits?
Well, benefits is what's the benefit of having a good hip? Right. No hip surgery. No hip replacement later on in life, right? You have a major player in your entire mobility of your body or control of your body, depending on what athlete or just you as a normal human.
Honestly, it's extremely obvious for anybody who deals with knee pain, foot pain, ankle pain, hip pain, low back pain, because you'll see huge relief the first time you do this. The first time you spend 20 minutes going through all of Prime Pro and addressing all these issues, you will feel amazing when you stand up and get up off the ground. Now, where somebody might have a harder time feeling the difference is if you're hypermobile already, or you're somebody who's maybe 19, 20 years old and you haven't dealt with any ache or pain or anything like that. Doesn't mean that this isn't for you. It means what's great is that you can actually progress, and you'll see there's progressions through this and a lot of these moves. And just like we have done with every other program, you guys will see in the future, we will start to do a YouTube series that will be Prime Pro for like the super advanced, because there's plenty of progressions to work through.
And think about it this way, in terms of performance, you have no pain, everything feels good, but you know that when you're your strongest, typically within the mid-range of a muscle contraction. So what I mean by that is, if I take my bicep, and this is the end ranges of my bicep, somewhere around here, I'm gonna be really, really, really strong. When I bring it to my absolute end ranges, I'm typically not as strong. So if you can increase the end ranges, or in other words, improve or lengthen the connection you have to those muscles with longer ranges of motion, you're going to be much stronger within those mid-ranges. Your mid-range gets a lot wider. So now as an athlete, you're performing better, or in the gym, you're performing better. Now your squat, your normal squat, is just stronger because you're stronger or more connected to those end ranges of movement.
Yeah, the example I use is, imagine a football field, right? Most of us go to the gym and we train at the 50-yard line. We might get to the 40. What we're doing here is we're taking you to the end zones and working back, right? So if we can take you from the end zone and work back, everything in between becomes a piece of cake.
Yeah. Excellent.
You've increased your range there. I wanted to see this question here. They're asking, is there a correlation between increased mobility with the 90-90 position in strength? So
absolutely,
for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. If you're getting more connected to muscles that are responsible for your mobility in your hips, it's more muscles that you're going to recruit to your big lifts. So, I mean, you'll see a huge carryover. I've seen it in the last 6-7 months.
Oh my God, you just squatted 4 plates ass to grass. You could never do that before, and at a lighter body weight.
Right, and it's also just me starting to work. I've only been back at my strength training for a month, so super excited to see my progression. And what was a tough one for me was I was really afraid, like, okay, if I put a lot of effort into focusing on my mobility, regressing all my weight, am I going to lose all this strength, and am I going to all this hard work that I put so many years into? Literally, it took me 4 weeks, and I'm already back to all of my PRs and almost all of my lifts, and I barely just started getting back to my strength training. So
it's incredible.
Yeah, pretty exciting.
So the next video, I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, we got a lot of questions.
Okay,
we got
cool.
some good questions.
All right,
too.
all right, let's answer some more.
Another one is just kind of relating to like the increase of strength at the end ranges. This one's a little more technical. So he's like, is it possible to increase strength at the end ranges like that, though? I heard that was based on the optimal length of sarcomeres. This one's for you, Dr. Brady.
Yeah.
So what I'm looking at, just trying to keep it as a simple test. How far can you strengthen yourself? Everyone's different, right? We don't know. Science is always changing. So as we get people into these end ranges of movement, how long is that muscle? How long is that hip? Again, the anatomy is completely different. So if I can get you to get your hip to become 10% stronger, I guarantee you as whether you're weightlifting, you're bodybuilding, you're an athlete, you're going to take 10% more. If you can go 20% more, and everyone's different. That's why this is such a hard baseline to try and tell. If we're going to get into the nuts and bolts of it, yeah, how much can you strengthen based on sarcomere length and all that stuff? To me, at the end of the day, does it make a difference? Are you looking at trying to gain more strength? What do you have to lose by having more control over your hip?
This one's a little more programming based. I like this question. While continuing to work on strength training, how do I include this into my training and not spend a few hours a day in the gym?
So the Prime Pro exercises that you're going to see when you get the program you can do them as part of your normal workout, but ideally you do them anytime.
Throughout the day.
Throughout the day. I mean, all these movements, when you program this out, when you do your repatterning movement, your tension control movement, and your active control movement, that's going to be a grand total of 3 to maybe 8 minutes of activity, which you can do at any time. So you're at work, you got a break, you got some floor space or whatever, you do those 3 movements. Or you're watching TV, you do those 3 movements. Or you're at home in your home office, you do those 3 movements. It's all about frequency. So you can do it in your workouts too. But
I'll tell you how, and this is why I brought this up when we first started the webinar, was I knew this would become a question, is how do I program this in? How many reps, how many sets, how much should I do this? The way I did this was I made sure that I primed my body every single workout before I went first. That was the first thing I did. I said, okay, there's no way I'm lifting without priming myself first, especially if I'm deadlifting, squatting, overhead pressing. I'm most certainly addressing those hips and shoulders before I go into these major lifts. So that was a must, as I spent the first 10 minutes of every workout priming my hips and shoulders before I went into these major lifts. After I got consistent with that, and that became a natural routine, just like brushing my teeth every single morning, then I started to add it throughout the day. Then I would start to come down when we get to Mind Pump Studio. I'd drop down before we get a recording, spend 3 to 4 minutes on some of these movements, then record. 2-3 hours later when I get home, get down right before bed, and you start adding more and more. Frequency is king when it comes to all of these movements. So more is better. Where you can go wrong is when people start to get really intense with it. You're not trying to be super intense and work really hard at it.
you're not trying to tear muscle down.
Yes, you're not exactly. We're not trying to build, tear down in this. We're just trying to repattern. We're trying to get your brain to get used to being in these positions, connecting to these muscles that you've lost connection to over years.
Okay.
Okay, I think that's going to be it for the questions right now. I think we'll go ahead and go into the next video.
Okay, so the next video you're going to see is a tension control movement for the hips. There's a few of them in the program, but the one we're going to show you is the floor kick. You'll like this one, and pay attention to Adam's socks.
Yeah, they're cute.
All right, so here we got a little hip tension. So obviously in a seated position, we can get both sides. So we want to get your hip flexor to work here. We're going to try and get your hamstring and quad to pretty much get torched. So,
yeah. That's why I opted in for Adam on this one.
So you're using the shoe just as like feedback for me right here,
shoe is a feedback, exactly. So what we're going to do is here, heel's going to go to the outside. You just have to maintain that right against your side. We want to make sure that you create good extension through the arms. We don't want you to bend because you're going to want to round. So we really want you to push, push that chest
that already
forward.
is difficult right now. It's already to wedge that, to posture up and squeeze is already.
And this is now getting that hip flexor to work. So many people's hip flexors don't work how they're supposed to. And just maintaining this is going to be work. So now what we want to do is slowly keep pulling your thigh to your armpit. Don't let the shoe fall out. And I want you to slowly start to kick towards the ceiling. If the shoe falls out, that's your weak point. Obviously, you don't want to go, beyond that. So keep trying to pull, and there it goes.
That's your spot.
Right? So, from there, we want you to try and hold. So right before you feel like you're going to lose it, I want you to stop. And I want you to stop right there. Now pull harder here and go a half an inch higher. Don't lose the shoe. Pull here, pull higher. Keep pulling, keep pulling, keep pulling. Push your chest forward a little bit more. There we go. Pull, keep pulling. You're getting ready to lose it. Pull harder. Max effort, pull. Try and kick a little bit higher if you can. Keep going, keep going, keep going. Good. There you go.
So you just incrementally, you increase that max effort, and then you go for that little bit extra to try and press.
Yeah, you're just
range.
and you may only move a centimeter or so. I mean, that's okay because you're just working harder at doing it.
Couple things for sure.
Ladder.
The posture, I think, just getting people to chest up, bring the knee in already is.
This is gonna be challenging.
Yeah, because as soon as I bring the knee,
you want to collapse.
Yeah, my shoulder wants to collapse. So this is already work, just to fight it in and just to hold that position. Then to ask me to extend. I mean, I think just getting people into that posture, squeezing the shoe, if you can do that, and then like you said, then just get to that position.
Start to kick up.
And then
you're ready for karate after that.
That's right.
Yeah, brutal.
We back, Doug?
We are.
All right, we're back. So you just saw a tension control movement called the floor kick. So the goal of that particular movement is, again, to connect to, with intrinsic tension, some full ranges of motion with the hip. That's different than the 90-90. So I know we have some questions there. I don't know.
Well, one of the first ones that I saw was, will this program make me more flexible? Let's talk about flexibility versus mobility. Why don't we go ahead and cover that?
I guess my question to you is why would you want to become more flexible? What's your journey to becoming more flexible? And again, go back to the answer, it depends, right? So if you want to become more flexible and you don't have strength, it's useless range of motion. So
It's dangerous.
Yeah. So what we like about this here is it's teaching you to become more flexible, but always under control, under tension. So we're teaching those muscles, we're teaching those joints, hey, at 0% or 100%, we own that range of motion.
Remember in the previous video where Dr. Brink lifted Adam's leg, that's Adam's flexibility, but he's not connected to it. The more flexible you are and the less connected you are, the more unstable you are.
Yep.
That's where injury comes into play, big time. So you don't want flexibility unless you're connected to it.
And I see that a lot with my dancers, right? My dancers are highly flexible, but they don't have a lot of control. Thus, they come in with a lot of low back, hip, and knee issues because they're always pounding on those joints because that's why they're so flexible. There's no control.
All right. Okay, this is one specifically for a sport like powerlifting. Would increasing mobility beyond a necessary amount be beneficial?
For performance, yes. Now remember, you've got to be connected to that mobility, so you're strong within this new range of motion, so yes, it will make you stronger. But more than that, as a powerlifter, you're always pushing yourself to the limit with weight. The limiting factor with powerlifters is almost never their strength, it's almost always some kind of mobility or pain issue. Every powerlifter I've ever worked with will tell me, well, I think I need to work on this muscle or that muscle, but then you go ahead and do a test with them, you're like, you have no mobility in your shoulder, or you've got poor recruitment patterns in your hips outside of your squat. That's going to take away from your max squat, big time. So definitely will improve your performance in powerlifting.
But I think if you are one of those elite athletes or you work with an elite athlete, you have to sprinkle this in with them, right? You don't want to sit there and make crazy change with them because, again, they're a professional athlete for a reason. I don't want to sit there and work with a professional golfer and say, okay, we got to get your hips to really move right now when you don't have this rotation. They've been used to that swing for a long time.
That's a great point.
So we have to slowly implement change into them so they see change over maybe a 6 month to a year window versus a 6 week window. Because if I screw with their swing, all of a sudden it drops and their handicap drops or goes up, I'm in trouble, not them.
That's a great point.
Somebody asked too, what is a passing line for this? And that's why I mentioned earlier we're going to do videos on YouTube. When you get good at this, there's lots of progressions.
Yes.
There's lots of progressions to the 90-90. I mean, we could probably write a whole program just on the 90-90 and all of its progressions, but instead what we'll do is we will create a playlist on YouTube like we've done for all the other programs to continue to progress this. So once you get good at all these moves, we'll have additional ones that will come out for free for all those that have the program that we'll be able to add those in their arsenal.
I think as you add moves into 90-90 that you were talking about as a pass is, can I transition into other movements fluid-like? So if I can move into other movements and I don't have any restrictions through my joints, there's your pass.
Right.
If you feel hitches, and you can't move or you're stuck in a position, that's a fail point. So I'd want you to work on that fail point even more so.
Right, that's an excellent point, right? Taking it right to where you feel like you fail and then sticking around that area and working on it.
I think this is an important question. They asked if you experience sharp pain in the hip when doing the shoe exercise. Does that mean there's an injury there?
So is it sharp pain? My question to them is it the muscle that's firing? Because a lot of people in this exercise right here are now trying to get that hip flexor to actually work, and they've never actually got their hip flexor to work, and now it's that reciprocal inhibition that's supposed to work that doesn't work here, quad on, hamstring off, well, they're all on, and with them all being on at that point, your body is freaking out. So if it is painful, right, back off. Try and find the range that's painful, drop to about 10 to 15 degrees, just short of that, work that range. We want you to work a painless range. I never want you to go into any pain.
Well, and more than likely...
So flirt with the edge, basically.
Well, more than likely it is not, unless you've had some sort of an injury there, right? If you never thought you had a hip flexor injury where you tore something or had a major injury, and then you go to do this movement and all of a sudden you feel like this sharp pain or cramping sensation, which you see in the video. You see me, you see how painful that was for me, and I don't have an injury. It's just, it's that hip flexor cramping up like crazy while I'm trying to get connected to it. So more than likely, if you didn't have an injury before or done something to that hip flexor, and just because you get in this position and you all of a sudden feel that, that just means we have a problem there that we need to work on.
Or lay on your back and just pull your knee to your chest, actively. Do you have the same pain? Right? Because you're looking at the same thing. This is just a different dynamic. You're sitting, you're pulling, you're moving, versus just sitting on your back and getting that muscle to work.
Okay, here's another good question. A lot of people have overactive hip flexors and underactive glutes. Would this still be a good exercise for them to practice?
Yes. Yes, because in my opinion, so many people are out there just stretching their hip flexor like crazy. Just because we sit all day long doesn't mean that your hip flexor is like short and tight. What does short and tight actually mean?
Or what hip flexor is it technically, right?
Yes, so as you're working on that, strengthen that muscle. Where do you ever truly strengthen that muscle? That's a huge player when it comes to any hip mechanics. The hip flexor itself has attachments into your disc spaces. So if you can't control your hip, how are you going to control your low back at the same time? So we want to make sure that, hey, you're stable in all positions, but that hip flexor is a stability muscle and mobility muscle at the same time.
I think people confuse too overactive with strong. Like it's overactive, therefore it's strong.
Yes.
Actually, many times overactive means weak.
Great point.
Right.
And then going back into, if you have that sleepy ass syndrome, if they're talking about, I have underactive. Okay, what does underactive actually mean? Because I can sit there and have someone have the best glute bridge there is, and they're great, but the moment they go to a squat, they've got no connectivity. Or they go for a walk, all of a sudden they have bad feet, shooting up the rest of the body. The glute is now going to be shut down, if you will. Nothing gets shut down, right? It's just your body's trying to figure out its space and how to move within the capacity to make you the most efficient mover, because again, we're lazy by nature. Our bodies don't want to work.
Right. Always looking for the easiest path.
Exactly.
Right?
Adam, Heather says your mom called and she wants her socks back. Okay, just so you know. I like that. I'm trying to find another relevant
There'll be a link below
here.
for a discount on those socks.
Adam likes to keep just the bottom of his feet warm.
I didn't know we were going to be shooting that day, so I would have worn my better socks.
That's his excuse.
We moving on to
we pretty much, there's a lot of repeated questions at this point.
All right, so we're going to move on to the next video. Now, we went from a repatterning movement to a tension control movement. Now we're moving into an active control movement. Now again, there's many of these movements in Prime Pro. The one that we chose to show you today is called the kneeling hip hinge. So enjoy.
Right, simple little hip hinge here, but let's just not make it so simple. We're gonna go nice and slow. So first thing we want is to definitely be back on your toes. So if you can do this barefoot, that's gonna be key. Again, tall spine, right? This is tall kneeling position. Can you just feel, or do you feel like any, asymmetries anywhere while you're in this position, and then slowly just start to lower your hips. Again, think about slow. As you think you're going slow, go slower. We don't want that chest coming forward. We want you just to drop the hip all the way back, as far back as you can to those heels.
That would probably be the first checkpoint, is the shoulder scene if they protract.
Yep.
First thing that's going to happen is the body's going to want to round forward to get down in this position. So I'm already thinking about retracting the shoulders, keeping that chest high.
And then also, do you want to keep that chin sort of tucked instead of like, protruding forward?
Just sort of your neutral spine, if you will.
Yeah.
Whatever that is, but just
Whatever
upright.
it is.
Yeah, upright spine. And then from here, as he comes up and out of this, I want him to go even slower out of this. So if he did 5 seconds coming down, maybe we go 10 seconds coming back up, because we really want him to drive through these hips. We don't want him pulling anywhere else. So if he starts noticing he's pulling from something other than like these hips and driving through those hips, he's going to feel knees too, but
yeah, you can see him emphasizing
gonna work.
the vertical part of this as opposed to trying to lean into it.
Yep. And this is great for any hip hinging pattern. You got to understand how to hip hinge before you do most lifts.
Most anything, yeah.
And this is even daily living. You brush your teeth, you're creating a hip hinge. You're putting a dish in the dishwasher, you're creating a hip hinge. There you go. Think tall, pulling like your head up to the ceiling, driving your hips forward.
Now, would you also have somebody doing this with their tops of their feet flat?
I'd much rather go onto the toes, just because it's promoting better toe health. But yeah, they can do both. Go toes down and just see and feel the difference. Right, and that's something, again, you always want to try and feel the difference in where you're at. He has to go a little bit lower here, so someone that has some knee issues may not be able to get here. And look what he's doing. See how he's leaning forward here?
Into it,
So even though the foot changed, his torso changed as well. So as he's coming back up, I want him to really think pull, and he's going to feel knees working here, driving through those hips.
Do you feel a difference, Adam?
Yeah, it took a little more focus because you changed my foot position. I think I can get it now, though.
Yeah.
And if they can't, right, we can always just say, okay, just lightly push here into my fingers, right? So as he's pulling back here, he's still lowering through his hips. And all I'm doing here is just lightly just touching this, you know, in between the shoulder blades. Just giving him some different
to
feedback.
press against.
Yeah, not even pressed, right? He just feels my fingers, so he knows not to go away from that.
Got it.
Same thing if he was leaning forward, I'd say, okay, pull back and drive through your hip. There we go. Good.
All right, so simple, but we could really spend some time making sure every little checkpoint is
This is out of all the hip control movements we do, this is probably, I would say, the simplest.
Yeah.
That are the easiest for most people to start with. So I'd probably recommend, if you had a hard time on all the other hip control exercises we had, is to start here, master this really well, and then progress to the other ones.
Yeah.
All right, we back?
We are.
Okay, so
What happened?
now we're back. Now we're back.
Now we're here.
So you just saw a kneeling hip hinge. It's an active control movement. The hips do a lot of different things. Hinging is probably one of the more important things that they do. We have some questions, I think, Justin.
We do.
Yeah, one of them right now is that someone's asking if someone can't kneel, is there something else that they can do? And what we only picked a couple exercises.
There's a lot of them in there.
Yeah. There's a ton of different movements. We just picked a couple to show you guys as far as demos. I mean, like we said when we first started, there's 6 hours plus of tutorials on here. So there's plenty of different movements. If someone had like just reconstruction on their knee and they can't put any sort of pressure on their patella, then yeah, there's other movements that you can do.
Well, you can even do this. You can do just a hip hinge, right? Standing on the ground versus kneeling on the ground. But what we're working on here is working on 3 different major joints. We got the hip, we have the knee, and we have your toes. Right, so the toes, this is going to be a limiting factor for a lot of people because they don't have the flexibility in their big toe necessary. So this is going to crush them just sitting in that position. If they can't kneel, you can put a pillow underneath their knee if you wanted to as well. Just add a little bit of cushioning because some people's patella tendon is already on fire. It's not going to let them kneel on the ground. So put some padding underneath them. That's completely fine.
This person asked, should they not feel lower back tension with this movement?
You're going to feel, again, you're going to feel some tension, you know, but is it normal or is it abnormal? I want it to come through the hips. Very similar to like a glute bridge, right? When people are bridging and they feel it in their back, it's not a back bridge, it's a glute bridge. You know, so we want to make sure that those glutes are what you're eccentrically loading, and then at the very end range, you know, you squeeze them and you drive through the hip.
Well, and this is also why, you know, you can, when Brink's talking in the video, he's talking about as slow as you possibly can and really concentrating on decelerating from the hips versus arching the back, right?
Yeah.
So someone in their back, they may be arching their back to sit their hips back, which is really common, especially if you have excessive lordosis. So if you feel it in your low back, that could be the case. You could be sticking your butt out to drop back versus controlling it from your hips.
Good point.
And what's good about, I think, a lot of these, you know, exercises that, you know, that we've now come up with is a lot of them are baseline tests as well. This is a great hip hinge here. If you can't hip hinge correctly, how do you think you're going to brush your teeth correctly? How do you think you're going to put a dish in the dishwasher? How do you bend over to, you know, tie your shoes?
Or deadlifting.
You know, yeah, or again, go back to deadlifting. So many people can't deadlift correctly. This is a beginning stage for a simple deadlift right here. Right. Can you actually recruit the hip hinge how it's meant to be? So if you see them cheating somewhere up the chain, you know at some point they probably should not be deadlifting at all.
And for all of our personal trainers that are watching this, I mean, that's part of why we created this. It was so important that we created some sort of a baseline for all clients that you could be potentially training, because we know that teaching a squat, a deadlift, overhead press, movements like that are extremely complex. And a lot of times it's not because the client doesn't understand what you're trying to show them, it's that they can't connect yet correctly. And so this is how you teach them. So this is the base before anyone should be deadlifting and trying to PR or hitting their best squat ever. They should be able to do these types of movements before they go into something.
My God, the value you can provide to your clients by doing this kind of stuff, like they're not going to see this anywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
It's very unique. One person asked, what are the cues to know that your upper torso is straight during this exercise?
So I will just tell them, you know, think of there's a string coming out of the top of your head, right? And they're trying to pull it towards the ceiling. So tucking the chin, sort of putting the head back, just, you know, what is their proper posture? Everyone's posture is going to be a little bit different. If someone has a little bit more hyperkyphotic back, there's no way that they're going to be able to create that awareness right now. But still putting them in their correct position and having them engage through the hips, that's where I would start with them.
Okay.
Okay, this one kind of covers a couple of questions I saw. She asked, some people are feeling primarily in the quads, some in the posterior chain. Could this diagnose whether somebody is quad dominant?
It could, but remember, you're using your quads right now because you're at full flexibility in your knees. There's so many people that don't go to that position. So they don't go to that position. This is why they don't squat properly, right? They're not breaking that 90-degree mark. Here, you're breaking that 90 degrees. So you are actually making your knees have to work. Your quads are going to work eccentrically, right, as they are lengthening out while you're trying to get your hips back to your feet.
I would actually say it's very common to feel this in your
For sure.
quads.
Oh, for sure.
I
Yes.
think
And don't
most
forget there's
people
other
will
movement.
feel this. Most
Yes.
people will feel
Yes.
this in their quads, especially decelerating.
Yeah,
I mean, that's
yeah, definitely.
Accelerating for
Yep.
sure. I'm looking for more questions. Most of them are repeats, so I'm going to kind of let these feed through here.
Okay.
If you guys want to
Now, let's
discuss it a
just
little
go
bit
one more. If you can't get onto the toes, you can always point the feet into plantar flexion as well.
Thank you. That's
That will take some stress off that anterior chain, you know, the anterior fascial line. So if they can't do it because their toes are a limiting
Instead
factor.
of being on their toes like this, they just
Correct.
put 'em back.
Yes.
which
Yep.
I believe you demoed in the video. I believe you
Yeah,
demoed
yeah,
that.
I actually asked that in the video because I know even I saw some people on here like they noticed pain right away,
Oh, for
like
sure.
in that position, and like and that's why we also have toes on there.
Well,
We have ankles. Like these are all things we need to address.
You are going to notice, especially with the hips or if we were doing the shoulders, other areas that limit those joints. So don't worry, that's why there's all these other tests. So if you get in a position like that and your feet or your toes are driving you crazy, well, that's why you have a test for the foot and ankle that you'll get to later. Same thing would be going on if we were doing some sort of if we were doing a shoulder test and you feel stuff in your wrist and elbow, well, that's why you'll get to tests that address all of that.
I'm
too.
glad
So-
you said that. Don't forget, in Prime Pro, we have the neck. We cover the neck. We cover the shoulder and the scapula. Those are both two very important parts of that whole shoulder complex. The wrist, the lumbar spine, the hips, which we showed some of that for you today, the ankle, and the toes. So there's a lot of content in here, and if you're feeling one area doing a test for something else, well, then you go in that compass and you test those areas out as well. Do you have another question there, Jess?
I was just reading through a couple. I guess one of them was funny, but well, one of them was just kind of asking about like what motivated us to kind of create this program, like especially with like seeing imbalances in your practice and seeing imbalances in what we do.
I'll tell you what.
Go ahead, tell us.
Me, Adam, and
directing that at Sal. Nobody else.
I consider me, Adam, and Justin very, very proficient in correctional exercise. It's not that often where we get our minds completely blown. When we saw Dr. Brink, and he showed us some of these smaller areas of the body that we forget or that we don't know really much about as trainers, and he showed us the impact that it had on all of our other lifts and how we felt, it was absolutely mind-blowing. So the motivation behind this was we knew that this would have a huge impact on people's fitness, mobility, and we also knew that this would be massive for professionals in the fitness industry.
A lot of times, a question I want to piggyback off what you're saying, and then I want to answer why the knees and elbow aren't in there. And it's just if you have issues with the knee or the elbow, it's either going to be wrist and shoulder related, or it's going to be ankle and hip related. So that's anything going on with your knee is going to be addressed in any of the ankle foot issues or the hip issues. Anything that could be bothering your elbow is going to be addressed in the wrist or the shoulder issues. So you're going to go to the other ends, right? So most distal or medial to the body that is going to be causing that pain or issue. As far as what Sal was saying, we always knew that when we were creating the MAPS programs that this was going to be necessary. We knew that the assessment piece and regressing people all the way to the very, very beginning before you even step foot in a gym was super important. We just hadn't wrapped our brains around how we would deliver this for the masses. And when we got together with Brink, that was what helped us really piece this together. And MAPS Prime was the beginning of that, and this is just that much deeper of a dive into that. And now we feel like MAPS is complete now, that you have all the tools necessary to take all different types of people, from the extreme athlete regressing all the way back to the 70-year-old grandma or grandpa that can barely move. You could create an entire program for somebody like that can't even lift any weights around Prime and Prime Pro. So we now know that this is complete, that we can literally help anyone and everyone with all of the MAPS programs. So that was the real motivator.
What I love about this as well is you can take Prime Pro, and once you get good at our tests, the tests themselves, you wake up in the morning, you do the tests, for 10 minutes, in the morning. That's you priming your system for the day. Right? That's getting every single joint in your body to actually do what you need it to do and be ready for your day, daily activity.
Excellent. So recap, right? Are we good?
Let's recap.
So recap, Prime Pro correctional. It addresses details that have major impacts on your performance. Definitely helps with pain. Many times will correct issues that are causing pain. It establishes better recruitment patterns. Every single trainer on this should own one, for sure. This is a very valuable tool that you can use with all your clients. Of course, the way you program it, you use this frequently. It's not during your workout, before or after your workout. You can do it then also, but really it's just throughout the day. Now, a couple notes here. There is a coupon code for those of you watching this webinar. The coupon code is WEBINAR, WEBINAR. It's going to give you a massive discount, about 42% off the retail price. Also, for the next 7 days, all of you who enroll within the next 7 days, you get this shirt right here for free. And the place to enroll is mindpumpmedia.com.
Don't forget too, when you actually fill that out, there's a place to put the t-shirt. So one of the hardest things that you guys can help us out with is every time we've done a launch, we do like to give the t-shirts out to our forum or the early adopters to the program. And it's super difficult for us to
Let's make Doug's life easier, everybody.
Yeah, so it helps us out. When you purchase this, there is a place where you put your phone number in. When you're filling out your address, your name, and you're buying the program, there's a place where it says phone number. That's where you're going to put your shirt size in there. So you put your shirt size in where it says the phone number field.
We don't need your phone number.
We don't need your phone number. We need your shirt size. So we don't need to call you, but we do need your shirt size if we're going to hook you up. Be patient with that because there's normally a ton that we have to organize and get together, and there's always somebody that forgets that. And Doug's typically scrambling to get everybody their shirts out. So don't forget that. You want to open up and just keep answering? We have a ton of questions that are coming through here.
Oh, the discount's good for 7 days?
Yeah.
Okay, so it ends in 7 days, right? The coupon code webinar?
Yeah.
Okay. You guys want to answer a few more questions?
Let's do it.
Well, I want to address something that several questions have been asked relating to this is, and I know I have some people that are watching that don't work out. This is a great at-home type of program for somebody that is just looking for overall health and mobility. They got all kinds of pain all over. They have limited range of motion. You could literally live in this program and just do this all the time.
Just be healthy.
Yeah, and literally change somebody's life and how they move. So this is a great program for somebody who is not heavy into lifting weights. They don't have huge goals to build a ton of muscle or run a mile faster. They just want to feel good, helping those people out. And then the other end of the spectrum, the super athlete that is trying to get the most out of their sport, learning to prime their body. You'll be blown away just by applying. The first time you actually apply this and go into a workout or start your day, you will feel it. That's the coolest part about this program is it's one of those things that's not like, oh, just follow it for 6 weeks or 8 weeks and then you'll see change in results. It's immediately you will feel better right away when you start to implement the program.
Jordy was saying that a lot of people are asking about what the difference is between this, Prime Pro, and Prime. So Prime, in the compass, you have 3 movements.
Well, they're designed to work together.
They're designed to work together, very much so. Now, you can do one or the other. Prime is designed to help you prime your workouts. Prime Pro is much more correctional, much more in detail, and you're covering more areas. If I'm not mistaken, maybe Doug, you can correct me, when they enroll in Prime Pro right now, do they get an option?
Yes, if they don't already have MAPS Prime, they get a discount.
Okay, so if you enroll with Prime Pro and you don't have Prime, you should get a pop-up that will allow you to enroll in Prime for another discount. So
the way that I use it with a lot of my clients is Prime Pro is your baseline for your day, right? I want you to be a better human from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to sleep, right? And that can encompass, a 10-year-old, that I treat, or an 85-year-old that I treat. Anyone can use this. This is not exercise-based. This is getting your body to move better for you. Prime is now going to be, hey, how are we going to prime your workout? How are we going to get your workout to be the best workout there is? Well, if I'm already doing Prime in the morning and I'm getting my system already ready, and I do a little Prime workout because you know that your body is able to move how it's supposed to, you're just going to go out there and crush your workout. So, or whatever activity that you're doing.
excellent.
Hold on. All right.
We good?
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you guys. Look
Thanks,
forward
everybody.
to
Thank you.
all of our Maps Prime Pro. We'll see you guys on the forum. I'm sure we'll be discussing this all day long today.
Thanks for taking your time.
Wait till Doug turns this off.
Prime Pro penis.